Welcome to the podcast where we challenge the way you see food. I'm your host, Ariane Bozarth, a board-certified nutrition specialist and founder of ASO Nutrition. I'll make you question everything you thought you knew about diets and nutrition. Spoiler alert, all diets fail, and it's not your fault. Join me as we explore your body's bio-individual needs to finally put an end to the frustrating cycles of trial and error in chasing nutrition solutions. Nutrition isn't a one-size-fits-all, but you do have a biologically designed perfect fit. It's time to unlock your body's brilliance. Welcome back to the show. In today's show, I want to challenge one of the most fundamental beliefs when it comes to food, nutrition, and our health, the notion that calories matter. I can imagine that some of you listening may be taken aback by the notion that there is any world where calories don't matter when it comes to food. But let me tell you, by the end of this show, you may have a completely different perspective. In order to have discernment, we have to look at these ingrained concepts from different angles to see what rings true for us in our application of nutrition. Because we have the capacity to literally reshape our body and to do it with ease. But in order to get to this place, we need knowledge and discernment about what tools align with our bio-individual needs and what don't. So then we can set aside those that don't and focus on those that do. So for this topic today, we are going to do just that. We are going to reframe our understanding of calories by looking at its history and also the body's view of this metric. Do you think that we are leaner and healthier than we have been compared to, say, what our society was over the past 100 years? Most people would say more unhealthy. And I would have to agree. And even according to data by the Market Data Enterprises, which is a market research firm that specializes in tracking niche industries, Americans spend over $60 billion annually trying to lose weight and get healthy. And yet, despite all of this money spent each year, more than 2/3 of U.S. adults are overweight or obese, and more than half have at least one chronic illness. So it's easy to wonder what happened. Now, when you consider this, at the advent of the internet, we have access to millions of nutrition resources, experts, and health gurus out there. However, compared to 100 years ago, with that access to information and expertise, do we have more clarity or confusion about what foods are right for us to achieve the body and sustaining health that we desire? If you think about it, most would say more confusion. From doctors to leading nutrition and health and wellness gurus, they all share a common evaluation metric as the foundation to nutrition, healthy weight, and overall health, and that's calories. So this goes back to the focus for today. When did the notion of calories come into our understanding? And what happened to our connection to food and our health when it did? According to Cambridge University, calorie counting in the U.S. started around 1910 to 1920. It was during this period when there was this emphasis on science and rationalization and quantification. And food got reconstituted as calories and promoted as this new form of bodily discipline and self-regulation. In 1918, Dr. Lulu Hunt Peters published the first weight loss book, and it became a bestseller. It was titled Diet and the Health with the Keys to Calories. She was the first person to widely popularize the concept of counting calories as a method of weight loss. And she explained the importance of balancing food intake and energy used, and suggested a number of exercises that promoted the expectation that every dieter should be able to lose weight and get healthy if they abided by calorie restriction programs. She paid less attention to issues of what sorts of food a person should eat, but rather that a person could eat whatever they wanted, as long as they maintained a strict diet of their calculated calorie cap a day. So think about it. How familiar does this sound? Watch your calories, increase exercise, and this will equal healthy weight and health. What this reveals is that since this was introduced, we have been doing the same thing for over 100 years. And it doesn't appear, if we look at our answers previously, that this has been serving us. Just look at where we are as a nation when it comes to using food to achieve healthy and sustainable weight. When Dr. Peters' book became best-selling, the promotion of its key media at the time helped spread awareness. For example, the New York Times published an article claiming that, as a nation, Americans have become almost calorie conscious. And the promotion made people want to join in this calorie counting. The research shows that in her book, calories became a part of American vocabulary. Previous to this, people did not have this as a part of their language. In fact, she even had to provide instruction on the word's pronunciation. And the book was not just popularized with adults, but it spread to school children as well. And in 1927, an economist, Linda Roberts, remarked that anyone who doubts the possibility of popularizing calorie counting should observe a group of 10-year-old children counting their calories. However, it wasn't just the education of the term itself that spread. What's really interesting is that there was a huge stigma that also came along with the understanding of this term. In Dr. Peters' book, she linked the term calories with the messaging of the fashion industry at the time, that fat was no longer in style. She wrote about calorie counting and dieting as having a moral dimension, specifically suggesting that people who did not have control over their weight were morally suspect. And in order to be thin, especially women, must resist temptations, which she explained with the language of sin, punishment, and redemption. And this push towards women was readily absorbed even by young girls. It was reported that girls as young as 10 years old were writing to Peters to ask for dieting advice for how they could better resist temptations. It is cited that when a 14-year-old girl wrote to Peters triumphant about her weight loss, Peters responded by congratulating her with the following words: "I love to get letters from you, and it makes me happy to know that you are following my advice and getting out of the fat girl type." So as you can see from the beginning of its use, there has been pressure and control linked with this term calories. Think about how this has shifted our view of food. If the new measure of food became calories, then food also became associated with the stigma of shame, guilt, punishment, and sin. And it shifted to be seen as a tool of control over the body, especially for women. And the key is, when we return to the truth that we lost when this term was introduced, we return to the body and its incredible intelligence to remind us of what food really is. And this is the perfect segue into exploring whether this term is a valid metric when it comes to the body's perspective to answer the question, does the calorie metric align with our biology? So let's first talk about what calories are. When Dr. Peters brought calories into our vocabulary, it was defined as a unit of measure for the energy needed to raise the temperature of water content in food 1 degree Celsius. Looking back at her original work, Dr. Peters described the human body as fireless cookers. But what does this even mean? In the concept, it appears that the definition of food and the way we burn it is through thermal means, heat. Think of how this formed our notion of burning calories. However, one must then ask, do we burn food through thermal expenditure, like an oven? Do we break food down via heat in the body? You may think if I go running, I can burn more because I increase my heat. If this is the case, does the food sit there on days that you can't go running, like logs stacked in a fireplace waiting for a spark? The question is, does this definition fit the body's use of food? What is the heat that our body creates to burn or to utilize food? So let's look at this from the body's perspective. Heat is actually created through thermochemistry, through an energy exchange associated with the chemical reactions that lead to the rise in temperature. So what drives that heat? And the answer is adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. This is the energy exchange, or the energy currency of every cell. And this is the fuel source that all food creates, that enables cells the ability to uptake glucose from the bloodstream for cell function, or even to break down fat cells. So it's not actually heat itself that leads to the burn, but a series of biochemical and energetic reactions that run our metabolism. So now that we have a refresher on the knowledge that ATP is the fuel, is there a connection with calories and or with the food that we take in? So let's start by talking about equal calories in different types of food. If the body uses calories equally, and if calories are the unit of measure of energy, then this means that 1.5 cups of dark leafy greens, which is approximately 60 calories, are equivalent to one glazed donut hole, also 60 calories. However, we know these foods are different. Only one we would actually call healthy. We all intuitively know this to be the case. However, if it was all about calories, these foods would be equal in the body. The body would handle them with the same level of burn or energy exchange, and they would create the same level of fuel, extra energy for the body's function. However, we know that the fuel from the dark leafy greens is going to be higher and therefore is deemed healthy. So let's look at what makes this so. So now I'm going to put on my Nutri-Geek hat. If the science loses you, just ride with me for a minute, because you will get the main points, but also in hearing these terms, you will start to build your vocabulary for the body speak again. And the more that you do this, the more knowledge and discernment you will gain. Okay, so we established that ATP is the fuel used for our biochemical and metabolic function. This includes all cellular function, energy to detox, like removing waste stored in fat tissue, energy for cell turnover and regeneration, energy to move muscle contraction, to make neurotransmitters, etc. The process where ATP is generated in the body is via the citric acid cycle into the electron transport chain. And I won't get into all of the details of the biochemistry, but I want to highlight that these two processes are what the body uses to take all of your macronutrients and convert them into energy for metabolic function. So in order to have more energy to exchange, to move your muscles, and to get the most out of your workout and power your cells, you need efficient conversion of macronutrients from your food into ATP. And what the determination of efficiency in this process is your level of macronutrients. Think cofactors. Sorry, let me do that again. And what determines the efficiency in this process is your level of micronutrients. Think cofactors, catalysts, or sparks to create that flame. To get those macronutrients into the citric acid cycle and then into electron transport. This builds up the energy to create, to get those macronutrients into the citric acid cycle. These include vitamins such as B vitamins and minerals. If there are not enough of these nutrients available and the cell is deficient, then it must pull from body stores or from other cells. And in time, if you are depleted, then the excess can eventually get stored away in fat cells, since it can't process and be used as fuel. It's important to note that food rich in natural prebiotic fibers, along with other essential nutrients like dark leafy greens, allow the body to naturally create approximately 30% of the B vitamins required to increase the nutrient absorption. And this happens via the microbiome and the gut, and to increase the reserves available for macronutrient processing. Think of a savings account of nutrients. Hence, healthy equals increased health. Extra nutrients available for more cell function. Now, any intake that contains chemicals or additives that the body doesn't recognize, like excess processed sugar or toxins, such as the refined products in the donut, will require a higher intake of nutrients to be able to eliminate the toxins and still have enough available to convert any remaining macronutrients into energy. The higher the toxin load contained within a food, the greater the likelihood that there will be a nutrient deficit to process it. And this will be more likely to require the body to use its stores and then to store away excess in fat cells if the body is in a deficient state. Hence, unhealthy equals take away from health, or take away from the body's natural resources to be able to create that energy and cell function. This explains why the dark leafy greens create more energy or fuel versus the donut hole that actually robs us of energy or fuel. The metabolic pathways are driven by the duality between nutrients as facilitators and toxins, which take away or block the nutrients and pathways. So when you look at these two foods from the body's perspective, One is clearly an aid and will move right through the metabolic pathways not only to create energy, but also can increase the reserve nutrients to facilitate future energy creation and the processing of any future toxin exposure Therefore, regardless of how little or how hard we run the engine via movement, it is about the body's level of nutrients, the resources needed for function via ATP production, that makes the difference. So, what's interesting is if we know that different types of food create impact on ATP levels, why are we still using calories? And the truth is, it's too hard at this point. Experts in universities, government organizations, and the food industry actually regularly meet and organize the maintain. Let me do that part again. The truth is, it's too hard at this point. Get this, experts in universities, government organizations, and the food industry that regularly meet to organize and maintain databases of the nutrient composition of foods, they actually agree that calories is not a coherent unit of the body's thermochemical energy. They have stated that an equation that is based on ATP producing capacity of foods and their components, rather than on the total heat producing capacity of foods such as calories, would be a better metric. However, this would require different foods to be calculated in different ways, and there would be no standardization. Although this would be more accurate for our biology and will provide more insight into the foods that serve us best, it would also require a complete revamp of food labeling, health guides, and associated metrics that rely and depend on calories. And so the default at this time is to stick with calories. However, as we're doing when we unlearn and then relearn what makes the most sense for our biology, knowledge is power. And it doesn't mean that anyone listening has to stick with this model that has clearly failed us in improving our health and nutrition status. It seems like it's clearly time to move away from controlling our biology and instead move towards understanding what it needs so that we can start nourishing it with foods that truly align with our health and our goals. One of the things that I love about helping my clients see food from the body's lens is that it unravels stuck beliefs from old patterns or constructs that just don't fit when it comes to our biology. And it helps us to easily detach as we see things for what is real. And there is nothing more real in the world than our body and its feedback. Because the body reveals the truth. It reminds us that food is this incredible instrument to connect with and communicate with our body. And now we just need to expand our skills in using this instrument daily to see how our body and our health transforms. Thank you for listening. If you're ready for a journey of self-discovery through unlearning everything you thought you knew about diets, nutrition, and how it informs your health, and relearning from the perspective of your body's brilliance, then I invite you to join me next time as we continue to challenge the way you see food. Want to connect? Email us at info@theaso.com, THEACESO.com. And be sure to visit us at www.theaso.com, THEACESO, where you can find all of our latest podcasts, blogs, masterclasses, and services to bring your health journey via nutrition to the next level and based on your biologically designed perfect fit.